Oh, this is going to be a great day. I've just decided it's going to be a great day. I've got my new phone. I'm doing my quiet time here. See if I can show you guys my little quiet time here. I guess I can't because I don't know how to flip it yet, but I am sitting here trying to figure out how to work it because once I do, I'm just going to start uploading about all kind of stuff because I got a lot to talk about. So the family and I moved out here, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And we started a project where we would be building a cabin in the woods, y'all. And with everything going on with COVID and, prices and life and the way we want to do it, because we want to do it debt free. We don't want to do it and then we end up with a whole bunch of loans and debt after. We don't want to do that. So we're doing it little by little as we go. So we finally got someone to come in and sort of really level back the land. I mean, the land was already leveled enough that we were able to put the cabin there and to get most of it, probably 80% of it done, all of it done on the outside, but about 80% done on the inside. But it just was horrible outside. And I kept telling my husband, honey, I can't do it, because when I would go out there, seeing all the trees and all the stuff from construction, we had cleaned up a lot of it. Because let me tell you, I hope we can find pictures. My husband lost some of his pictures, but I mean, girl, when I tell you. But we had gone and cleaned up a lot of it, but it still just was a little too raw and rough for me. And I had nightmares, waking nightmares, not sleeping nightmares, but I would just be thinking, my gosh, I'm going to get out there, living in the country, and we're going to get used to all this trees and, debris from construction. And it's just going to sit there and I'm going to feel like, oh my God, like I've just gone back in time about 75 years. And I just didn't want to do that. So I have been pushing my husband to find somebody that would do one more clearing. I don't know how many feet, but enough so that the cabin, can be surrounded by grass, right? And not all this craziness. And so finally, girl, we found someone. And he's a really good price, and he's out there doing the do. Because where we are, we're so far out that we can't find conventional people and businesses that are willing to come out there to do it. That's also part of the struggle and why it's taken so long. But yeah, so I apologize, guys. I just turned the camera on and I said I'm going to just start talking, because if I try to make it a production, it won't get done, because I have done that before. I'll try to go in and do something like a production and I never do it. Or I do it and I think, oh, that's not good enough, and I pull it down. But so we got that part going. So I want to tell you guys about that, building out in the country, little cabin in the woods. I got lots to say about that. I want to take you guys on the journey a little bit, because the other half of it is that I haven't decided if I really want to share my home like that. I mean, in all honesty, once it hits the internet, is out there, and people know about where you are, where you live, and how you live in, and all kind of things like that. And then you open yourself up to comments, threats, all kind of stuff. So I've had to process that in my mind. And so as my husband and I have talked about it, we've thought, you know what, this might be a good idea, because we could make this, of course, it's a vacation home for the family. We'll probably get a mortgage somewhere else, possibly. If we feel like it, we might. But it can also be turned into an Airbnb at some point. And so that's kind of why I'm like, okay, that might make a cool story. We'll jump in here and we'll start sharing, because we do have pictures of when it was just a wooded acres before we even, did anything, any improvements. So we'll be able to put those in there. But yeah, so that's the big thing, is that the project is back on. I want to share that. I also want to talk about life. You know, about a year and a half ago, I decided to find out if your girl was ADHD. I had known for some time, that I was processing things a little bit differently than everybody else, and that I was entering spaces and perceiving things and moving through my life a little differently than most people, but I didn't know what to do about it. So when I was back in school, I remember a professor saying to me, I was in graduate school at the time, and I remember the professor was doing a lecture on children at the time with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or attention deficit disorder. And then he was doing the hyperactive part. And I'm sitting up in the chair looking at the board like, that's a disorder? That's been my whole life. I've been living like that, My mother would say to me, girl, you look like you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. I mean, she would say that to me like all the time. And I remember being the child that would have a sweater, take it to school, come back home on the bus, don't know where the hell the sweater is. I was always losing library books at the school. Mom would always have to pay for the books, and as soon as she paid the fee, I would find the library book. I was always losing stuff. And I can also remember being that student that was always talking, like when I was in first grade, second grade, third grade, I just talk. And I would get like A's and B's, but then in conduct, I would get like C's. And because the teachers felt kindly, they wouldn't give me any D's in conduct, but I would get like C's in conduct. We never thought about that stuff. Back then, nobody was telling you had, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or whatever. Nobody, you just was sit down, you talk too much kind of thing. Stop running your mouth, motor mouth. That's what they would say about me. And I remember my mother used to share a story that when she would take me to the grocery store with her, I must have been 2.5, 3, because I started talking early. So I must have been about 2.5, maybe 3. But because I'm little, I'm petite, I was really petite then. And so people really thought I was like maybe a year and a half, maybe 20 months. They thought I was probably 2. And I'd be talking in full sentences. And she said I'd be talking so much. Ooh, child, she said she couldn't get any grocery shopping done. I'd be telling her what I want, telling her what I don't want, asking her where this is, where that is, and just talking. And she said she got to where she would just have to leave me at home because she couldn't get anything done. So finally, she said she would leave me at home. And then when the store clerks and people would see her, they would say to her, Gee, where's that talking gal? Where's that little talking gal you got? Where's she at? You need to bring her back. Where's that little talking gal? Where is that talking gal? I just was always known for talking. Now, fun fact, that is one of the signs of girls that have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They talk a lot. So we sometimes think that it looks like ADHD looks like what it looks like in boys, where they're always moving about and going here and going there. But girls aren't always as physical as that. Some of them are. There's no one way to do anything. But a lot of girls with ADHD just talk a lot. They just talk a lot. My son's getting ready to go work out. Hey to the camera. All right, babe. Enjoy.
Just talking to the camera?
No, I'm doing a video.
Door, please.
All right, I'll close it. I'll lock it. Yeah, so let me shut this door here. Okay, so I really want to take some time on this channel and in this space to talk about what it's like to live with ADHD or any other neurodivergent situation. Now, I don't feel that ADHD is a disorder per se, if it's not extreme and if you don't require medication. I just think that it's just a way some of us show up. I also think it's the way some of us are made because of environment, right? Now, it has really been a challenge to be a successful individual dealing with ADHD. And I thought in this space, on this channel, I would talk about that as well. Like, I would talk about that a lot. I definitely want to talk about the cabin and what it's like, you know, getting it up, building it, the frustration that we've gone through. But honey, this is a space that we can talk about having ADHD, whether we see it as a curse or a superpower, and how we can move towards the superpower piece of it, because there are some benefits to being this way. Now, when I was in grad school and my professor was sharing with me, I can't even remember his name, but he was sharing with the class about students and children that have ADHD or ADD. I remember diagnosing myself in a lot, thinking, oh my gosh, you mean that's what's been going on with me all this time? I mean, showing up in a room where you're not quite sure how to act, you feel overly self-conscious, you know what I mean? You recognize that you're not perceiving all the cues that everybody else is perceiving, and so you may overreact to some things or underreact to some things. It's just the whole thing. And apparently at that time, I didn't have any extreme ADHD. I didn't require any medication, or I didn't behave in such a way that I was interrupting the classes completely. My teachers did tell my mom she would have to come in. They would tell her that I was disruptive in the class because I would finish my work and then I would go around and hop around and try to talk to other people or try to help other people. That was the big thing. I'd be trying to help other people. That's what I would tell myself. Oh, I need to help them. I would be easily distracted, can't focus on something, can't get myself initiated to complete a task. I would start lots of things. Now, when I was in elementary school, because it wasn't a significant disorder for me at the time, when I was in elementary school, I was a bright enough child, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are like that, where I could compensate and I would still get good grades. I would just have problems with conduct. Well, by the time I got in high school, I had sort of self-corrected and knew, okay, I got to sit in the seat. It would be killing me sometimes to be, sitting and having to pay attention in class. But I managed to figure that piece out, and I stopped getting the C's in conduct because my mama was she was tired of having to deal with that school. So I stopped that. But I was still very forgetful, still had trouble initiating and completing tasks. I still had trouble with remembering things. I still had trouble if I went into a space and I didn't quite understand what was happening in the space. It would either be I would be overly sensitive to something going on over here, and I wouldn't be able to pay attention to what's going on over here. It was just the whole thing. But again, because I probably was fairly bright at the time, I ain't saying I'm that way now, but at the time, I was able to still manage, get the A's and the B's that I needed to then get on to undergrad. And even in undergrad, it started to be a struggle, but I had a trick that I had taught myself. And if you all out there can relate to that, I want you to listen and see if this is something you can relate with. I had taught myself the trick of creating a crisis, because I found, and I wasn't doing this consciously, this is just what was happening, that if I could create some type of an emergency situation, I was able to motivate myself, initiate the activity, get it done. So I would be waiting to the last minute to finish projects. I would be waiting to the last minute. And then miraculously overnight, I can get the stuff done. I can focus, I can pay attention, I can get it done without so many mistakes, right? I have a few mistakes, but not the level of mistakes I would have when I tried to take time to do it, because I just couldn't get myself to do it, right? So when I would create these, like, oh, it's got to be done tomorrow, then I'd be able to get it done. And I would do a great job, and nobody really knew that that's what I was doing. Hell, I didn't even know that's what I was doing. And that worked for me. It worked for me all the way up through undergrad. But here's the thing. By the time I got to graduate school, that shit didn't work no more. That did not work anymore. And I remember being called into my dean's office my first quarter, the first semester. This is on semesters. The first semester in grad school, I was called to the dean's office. And he was like, look, this is going to be a quick trip for you. It's going to be a quick trip for you. If you don't get yourself together, this is going to be a quick trip. You're going to be back down south. And I was like, oh man, and that's when I really started doing the soul searching of what the heck is going on. What's going on? Now, granted, I did have some relationship issues that during that time where I was having to let go of somebody that had been in my life for probably a decade and had really been very beneficial in helping me navigate some things. God bless that young man. Whew, because he really had to deal with a lot because I had all of this going on in me, but not knowing, right? So you can imagine when a person has ADHD and things going on like that, it can really be difficult on relationships too, right? And so I had that going on. But aside from that relationship, I was still struggling, to complete tasks, to remember stuff. It was just really difficult. And that's when I started my journey of trying to figure out what was really behind all of it. And as luck would have it, God brought in this professor, and we're talking about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And that's when I began to say, damn it, I think that's what's going on with me. So after that class, I went to that professor's office and I said to him, I said, listen, I think I have this. I said, here's why I think it, because ... And I explained to him, I struggle here, I struggle there, I struggle here, I struggle there. You mentioned that these types of individuals struggle here, struggle here, struggle here. To which he said to me, well, Sonia, it's my government name. If you have made it this far, then clearly you don't have a problem. You figured it out. And because you figured it out, don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. You're in grad school. You're struggling a little bit here, but I think you can work on this and get this done if you just do what you got to do. He says, but just take the strategies. And I was like, you're right. Since I'm learning how to work with students that have these issues, or children, or people, because even people with brain injury can sort of mimic these same kinds of focus, initiation, completion, anger. They can have the same types of things, even if they have a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. It doesn't have to always be ADHD, right? So I was like, bet. So I started taking the strategies that I was learning for how to work with students and children and people that have these attention-based disorders, and I just simply did them myself. And so that's kind of how I've managed. And it has been a struggle and a march, honey, let me tell you, because every time I try to do something that requires a little bit more focus, a little bit more organization, a little bit more initiative, and a little bit more stick-to-itiveness, can't get there. I have tried to start business after business, great ideas, but I can't seem to get them past a certain point. And so as I go into this chapter of life, this is the squat to get off the pot chapter. This is the Colonel Sanders chapter. He was about 60 when he started KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. This is that phase. If you don't do it now, there is no doing. This is it. This is it. Okay. Flashback. So see how ADHD works? I'm just talking to you and all of a sudden I got Kenny Loggins in my head. Man. Okay. Back on track. So that's kind of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this journey. I want to share it. I want to find other people who are going through this type of, neurodivergency. I want to talk about my cabin journey with my husband and my sons. You met one of them. And I want to talk about being successful when you have attention-based disorders and how we can still be very successful. It may look a little different than how it does for other people. It may not be a straight shot, but we can get there. We can create that Colonel Sanders in our own lives, right? It may take us a while because we may not be able to get it all together by 40. We may have to, work on some things. It may have to take us a little longer to get there, but we can get there. So if that's something you think you're interested in, I want you to join me on this journey. Hopefully by then I will have figured out how to work my iPhone 17 Pro Max, baby. I'm serious this time. We'll figure it out. And honey, I'm not going to be showing up posh perfect, because if I have to do that with this ADHD, it won't ever happen. I'm just going, when the feeling hits, I'm going to turn on the camera, and what you get is what you get. And I hope it's good, because, I want to be good. ADHD, we very sensitive. ADHD, we very sensitive. We're sensitive people. So I hope it's good. But anyway, this has been very long, but I love you, and I'll see you soon.